While humanity had come to their friend's aid, the Vox had used the pause in the war to prepare. In that time, any Vox planet not damaged by the war went into full production. For the Vox, this meant the majority of their people would fall under the yoke and the whip. And this was their war economy, the war economy of the Vox. Every single male was given a bunch of tests to see where they would best serve the Empress. Any male of certain age ranges were immediately forced into service, no questions asked. Those better suited for manual labor or R&D were sent to specific work camps. Those with experience would train the younger military-age males to fight and die for the crown. The training was, of course, difficult and harsh, as they geared up to drive into the fire with the humans. The men sent to work did not have it any easier. 80 to 90% of their entire day was spent mining, construction work, distribution and maintenance of weapons, gear, and ships in order to facilitate the war. Many of these workers worked themselves to death, literally right there on the line, only for the body to be jostled around to see if they were still alive, then simply swept off and dumped somewhere. Once they were removed, a fresh worker would be brought in to take their place. The only reprieve either groups of men had is when they returned home to perform their additional civic duties. The female Vox had a very specific purpose. They needed to produce as many offspring as possible, as fast as possible, to fill out the ranks. To this end, females are married off young, so young, in fact, that they are actually not done physically maturing before being forced into said marriage. If the female did not produce any offspring very soon, they might in fact find themselves being brought under a different type of service, as they would find themselves being bred by multiple males when the husband is off in his work camp. Through all this, eugenics became common on each world, each one trying to show off more for their crown by forcing the population to produce more weapons, ships, and personnel. What came out of all this misery was far more advanced war machines than previously used. Along with that, eugenics-born stormtroopers trained from birth to handle said weapon systems. Just about the time humanity was about to begin the war march again, the Vox charged into human territory, targeting colony, mining, and agricultural worlds. This would be used as a way to demoralize the humans and also cut them off from their supplies, which is a vital step to war. The Vox made it a point not to jam any of the videos showing their new forces tearing civilians apart they wanted the humans to see. The new Vox are larger, leaner, have new exoskeletons that protect many of their critical parts. These faster and meaner Vox would kill much, much faster, yet still pause to relieve themselves with whatever woman, man, or child they chose. As it turns out, the screams coming from the victims only seemed to delight the Vox even more. The Vox battle plan was actually very simple. Take important worlds as they push as far as they can, preferably all the way to Earth. If they can take Earth, then they can show this upstart species, along with this species' allies, who exactly runs this galaxy, whether or not they can take the planet or simply sue for peace. The plan itself was beautiful in its simplicity, yet there was one flaw that they had not realized. The humans were supposed to be one place. However, the humans were not exactly where the Vox expected. The Vox royalty believed that the humans would still be preoccupied with their mercy mission to save the Watcha. They had studied human culture and realized that the humans would always sacrifice to save their allies, or what the humans call friends. With the humans still dealing with the issues outside of their own borders with the Watcha, Earth should be far less defended, which would be true. Pushing through the first few systems, the Vox pushed hard on their way to Earth. As they did, they pushed through and damaged everything that they were supposed to, as this huge bulge on the map showed them heading straight towards the Sol sector. As they got within one sector to clear before reaching Sol, the Vox fleet jumped into Proxima and began landing immediately. They believe all they would face are defense satellites and a few ships in orbit. What they found was, well, exactly that. For about 41 seconds. Jumping in was the fleet from Proxima that had been on its own way to answer a distress call from the neighboring system. Then the Earth fleet arrived. Then Mars, Venus, Centauri, Spartans, Hussars, War Sniper, America, Queensland, Tassiar, and on the fleets of every human system arrived, some of them vast, many of them quite small. The Vox knew that it was normal for the humans to talk before engaging, but something was off. They looked on the sensors and they could see that all the human weapons are heating up, turrets are adjusting, and drone swarms are immediately being launched. And before they knew it, torpedoes were already sent in from every direction for every single fleet. Seeing this, the Vox Admiral turned the communications on himself as he slammed one of his many arms down. "What is the meaning of this? Your culture demands that you offer peace before warfare." A human voice came in. "That was before we found out what you had done." "What do you believe we have done?" Watching the screen, he saw the torpedoes and the drones were still closing from pretty far off. Yet the huge amount on his sensors still made all the blood rush out of his face. The human voice came across, not even bothered to introducing himself. "We don't think. We know. We know that you poisoned the Watcha. You were willing to kill an entire species that was not part of this conflict. You would risk a galaxy-wide plague to end up as what? Swooping in and suddenly looking magnanimous at the end? You have no proof to support these claims." "In fact, we do. After our researchers were finally able to isolate the viral bacterium you used, it was not difficult to find the anodyne cortical isotope you used as a binding agent. There's only one planet that has this in its purest form, the pure form needed to complete your pathetic science experiment. It was from your home planet." The swarm at this point was almost within effective range of the Vox fleet. Thinking fast, the Vox Admiral said, "Even if you are successful in this space against our advanced war fleet, your forces will be mauled to the point in which you will never be able to fight a single one of our planets. Then you'll face our enhanced warriors, and when that happens, your armies will fall like those of the foolish Watcha." He seemed to laugh at this, but the humans didn't laugh. Instead, the human who turned out to be the Admiral said, "Just shut up and die already." The battle kicked off moments after this, and the advanced Vox ships began to tear into the torpedo swarm and drones. Each of the Vox ships spouted now, instead of just a handful, 2 to 3 dozen point defense systems each. Though the targeting system was only marginally better than what they had before, the sheer volume made up for it. The nimble human drones, however, were still hard to hit, but they couldn't get very close. Some got hits, but it was still far less than what the humans expected. They expected a mad rush. The armed torpedoes were also able to strike, but unfortunately it was in far less numbers. The Vox, seeing this, delighted in their success, until, that is, the ballistic rods came in. They came in at .9, the speed of light. The drones actually open up holes in the formations, their own electronic signatures blocking the Vox from seeing the rods come in. They open these holes just in time for the rods to yeet past the drones and not allowing the Vox to actually maneuver at all, which meant a lot of direct hits. The Vox fleet was surprisingly quick to adjust their positions as they realized that their formation is what was currently keeping them alive. All this while they constantly send ships towards the planet. As the Vox try desperately to keep the swarm of drones back, they once again see the drones move. This time, the Vox are ready as they're ready to get out of the way. The drones open up, creating giant holes this time in their formation, far larger than they need to for just a few rods to come through. As they do, the human energy weapons begin to turn the proud Vox advance fleet into molten slag in space as they drag through, slicing and melting everything. After targeting the main command ship, the Vox fall into disarray. As they do, the thinking machines now had their opening and came down onto the Vox fleet like a vengeful god. The Vox in space did not last much longer as they were torn apart piecemeal as the drones came in, firing their ordnance first, creating large holes, then ripping the Vox ships apart, then using their weapons again to slice larger holes in. All this, anyone not being covered by the swarm was being penetrated by the main guns of the human fleet. Any Vox shuttle that just happened to not get caught up in the human swarm of drones was immediately grounded, as they knew what would happen if they attempted to flee. The Vox on the ground faced a population that had been preparing for a rematch. On the initial Vox invasion, Proxima was actually caught with their pants down. Even though they were able to take out all the invaders, the loss of life stayed in their collective consciousness, and they really were hoping the Vox would come back. This time, it didn't matter that the Vox on the planet were more, shall we say, stronger, faster, better armored, and armed, as each of them carried a strange las cannon. It didn't matter as the citizens of Proxima came at them like angry flying monkeys. Using large vehicles with even larger weapons, they could fire on any Vox they saw, surprising the shit out of the Vox. They believed that their new 38 centimeter thick chitin shells would actually protect them. Maybe from a glancing strike, it would just knock them over. But a direct hit still meant a spray of innards, the sounds of agonies, and the smell of that giant maggot being sprayed everywhere. They were so brutal that when the pods landed from the human fleet and the exosuited soldiers began to seek and destroy any Vox they found, what they found was the citizens already pushing the Vox bodies into hastily dug holes using excavators. The Vox did manage to secure a fairly large area, and did found out real quick what happens when drop troopers arrive and find a whole bunch of dead civilians, many of which were dead from, well, many of them didn't want to talk about it. Many of the troopers ended up using their chainsaw attachment to cause maximum pain as they tore the Vox down, or as the Vox came at them, screaming and roaring, trying to intimidate, charging straight at them, they would launch explosives down the Vox throat, usually saying, "Smile, you son of a bitch," as they launched it in, most of them bouncing off a tooth or the nose or something, causing a massive explosion on the head. Others would actually go down the throat, and many of them would say, "3 points," right before a Vox would simply pop like a pimple, which was oddly cathartic once they realized that they had just ended the Vox that had taken down so many civilians. With the battle over, the human fleets only had one way to go. They all turn towards Vox territory. Twice, the Vox have now invaded human space. Twice, they have gone for Earth. Now, there will not be a third time. Hello, everybody. This is Syntax. Thank you so much for joining me on today's chapter. Before I go, I'd like to send out a special thank you to a couple of my supporters. That would be SS Demon and Erica Gem. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. Everyone else, I will see you on the next one. This is Syntax, ejecting.